What makes you say that? Reef paused, wasn't sure how to continue. Then, my grandfather had a stroke. It's what killed him. Oh, I see. He was sure, of course, that she didn't see, couldn't see. He'd actually been grateful for the stroke, had in fact once wished it had come sooner. It was the one thing that had finally stopped the drinking, the rages, the flood of empty threats he never stood up to, never challenged. Wished he could have, but never did. If he'd believed in God, he'd have thought the stroke was an answer to an unspoken prayer. But he knew it wasn't, not when he saw what it did to his grandmother. He'd hated watching her look for any sign of improvement, any reason to hope. She'd held her husband's hand for days in the hospital, rubbing it softly, all the while talking to him, telling him over and over that everything was going to be all right. But it wasn't. Not then, not ever. Even then, the cancer was growing inside her. It just hadn't told anyone yet. I don't assign new volunteers to the 8th floor anyway, Shelley continued, or the 7th for that matter. Patients who've had strokes or lost limbs often require a level of patience and compassion that even professionals take a while to develop. Over time, though, that's all right, Reef said. What about the he'd forgotten the term, musculoskeletal? That's on the 6th floor. How about we put you there to start? Reef would have preferred she put him on a bus back to North Hills, but that wasn't going to happen. The judge had made sure of that. Fine with me, he lied. After giving him a quick overview of the 6th floor and introducing him to the medical personnel in the musculoskeletal unit, Shelley Simpson had left him with a nurse named Carly Reynolds, who put him to work almost immediately. We can always use another body around here to help out, she said. She glanced at her watch. In fact, I've got a job for you right now. You're on traffic control. He waited for an explanation. In the next few minutes, that elevator door is going to open and 2 wheelchairs are going to come out full tilt. She seemed to notice the surprise in his eyes and laughed. No, I'm not clairvoyant. It's just that 2 of my patients usually come up from physio at the same time. And if someone isn't here to stop them, this hallway turns into the Indianapolis 500. As if on cue, the elevator binged and the doors opened, revealing 2 people, a young woman and a man about Carly's age in wheelchairs, each jockeying to be first off. Hold it, Carly ordered, sticking her hand out like a crossing guard. The 2 looked up and grinned sheepishly. Busted, the young woman said. Reef, said the nurse, meet the bane of my existence, Brett Turner. And this is her partner in crime, Ron Sheffield. Guys, this is Reef Kennedy, hall cop. She punched out the last 2 words for emphasis. Reef here is going to help me make sure everyone observes the speed limit. She leaned toward Reef and murmured, whatever you do, don't get your feet in front of them. Turning to her partner, the young woman groaned. Looks like the hall Nazi as reinforcements were screwed. Her partner laughed, so did the nurse. Reef moved forward, keeping an eye on his feet. It turned out that Brett was as much help as she was hindrance. She gave Reef a tour of some of the other floors, including the 2nd and 3rd, where, she said, the real action was. It was when he saw the physio gym that Reef began to wonder if he'd be able to handle this volunteering thing after all. The patients he saw there were a far cry from Brett Turner. An old man sat hunched over in his wheelchair, pulling on a rope attached to a weight. And despite the encouragement he was getting from the therapist working with him, and despite the fact that the weight couldn't have been more than a couple of pounds, it was all he could do to pull the rope a few inches. To his right, a middle-aged woman was attempting to walk between 2 parallel bars, but had managed little more than a halting, snail-paced shuffle. At the far end of the gym, a man in his late 20s or early 30s was trying to walk up a ramp whose incline was minimal, but even from the door, Reef could hear him groaning with exertion. Across from him, on the far wall, was a basketball net, and Reef thought whoever hung it had one pricey 6th sense of humor. It was obvious that no one here would be using it. The 3rd floor, which contained the general recreation area, was much less depressing. Many of the walls found on the other floors were absent here, allowing for a large open area beyond the elevators that served as an entertainment center. The room contained 3 large sofas and several armchairs and recliners, separated here and there by tables covered with books and magazines. Off to the left were higher tables on which lay a chess set, cribbage board, and assorted games. To the right was a large screen projection TV with VCR and DVD player. And near the windows at the far end stood a regulation-sized pool table.